Welcome to the first chapter of our Best Practices series, Ethics. More specifically, we're going to be focusing on CACM's Code of Professional Ethics and Standards of Practice. This is not a replacement for reading them. I would recommend that you read them again, and again, and put them into practice. It's really important, I feel, to revisit the Code of Professional Ethics and Standards of Practice, because if you've been certified for any number of years, it's easy to forget things that we studied and learned early on in our career. So it's nice to revisit it and make it a part of your daily life and your professional life, because really it's all about your professional reputation and the reputation of Collins Management. So here's what it all boils down to. The cornerstones of ethics: be loyal and faithful to your client. That's the association that you manage. Be truthful and have integrity when representing your client to third parties. Be honest and forthright in your personal dealings. And honor confidences. So let's dig into the definitions a little bit more. Loyalty, the quality of being loyal. That's a so-so definition. I like the second one better. A strong feeling of support or allegiance. And then look at the similar words: allegiance, faithfulness, fidelity, obedience, fealty, and adherence. So my question to you is, how does this apply to you in the management of your communities? How is loyalty best represented in your relationship with the clients that you serve? I'm not going to answer this. This is a question for each of us. It's very likely going to be a different answer for each of us. Faithful. Now, I like the first definition: strict or thorough in the performance of duty, because frankly, that's what we're supposed to be in our daily working lives, is strict and thorough in the performance of our duties. And then true to one's words, promises, and vows. Don't make a promise that you can't keep, and keep all the promises that you make. And then look out at number 4, reliable, trusted, or believed. And that trust is earned by being strict and thorough in the performance of your duty and being true to your word, promises, and vows. It all kind of ties together. Honest, free of deceit and untruthfulness, sincere. So the similar words are truthful, sincere, candid, frank, direct, open, and forthright. And this is in your personal dealings with your boards of directors, personal dealings with your coworkers. You can also work on being honest with yourself. And honesty also includes being honest about a mistake that you might make. Be honest about it and go fix it. Now, I know of a manager who was hired at a place that, an association that I used to manage. I left and she was hired. And she claimed to be a CCAM, but she wasn't. And she proceeded to write bad checks to herself. She actually altered a check that had been written and cashed and somehow made it payable to her. She stole using the association's credit cards. She misrepresented herself in everything that she did. And ultimately, she went to jail for this stuff. She wasn't honest, and she didn't have integrity. Integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles and moral uprightness. Well, she didn't have the moral principles to be a manager. She wasn't morally upright. Now, I received the turnover of an association when I was working for another company, and the prior manager had been, unbeknownst to the board of directors, writing herself checks for 10% of each and every contract. So for every $1,000 of repair work that she hired somebody for, she would take an additional $100. For every 10,000, she would get 1,000. It was a sweetheart deal. And she was also taking kickbacks from the landscaper. And the landscaper wasn't really working. And when he was working, he was doing unnecessary jobs just to rack up the money. And she was taking that money. And also she had a 7-member board when the governing documents only called for 5. Now, one thing to realize is actually her contract called for her receiving those 10% perks for each contract that she entered into for the association. So her management contract included that. So I'm not sure really if that's a lapse of honesty, because she was honest with the board, but certainly a lapse of best principles and integrity, and also a lesson to the board of directors to really carefully read their contracts. Honor confidences. A confidence is the feeling or belief that one can rely on someone or something, a firm trust, or a secret and private matter told to somebody under condition of trust. So if somebody tells you something in confidence, you're not supposed to share it. But I have a scenario for you, something that actually happened to me. I'm not going to tell you how I handled it, but I will tell you about it. I was once working for a company, and I was managing an association on site. And shortly after I got there, 2 board members came to me and they told me, we're going to be changing management companies, but we want you to stay on as the manager. We like you, but we're going to cut your management company loose. And by the way, don't tell them. So what happens when you're put in between your board of directors and your employer? Whose confidence are you supposed to honor? Now, I'm not going to answer that with what I did, but it's something that I would recommend you think about. How would you react in the same situation? Practice due professional care. That means getting yourself educated and continuing with the continuing education, because the laws consistently and constantly change. And also recommending that your board of directors get educated too. You have CACM, they have ECHO and CAI. You also have CAI. An educated board is a board that's going to make the appropriate decisions. An educated board won't get in over their heads and will likely remain on the straight and narrow, whereas an uneducated board may inadvertently make mistakes and bring liability onto themselves. Also, adhere to the law, and recommend that you talk to your boards about adhering to the law. Adhere to the CACM's rules regarding education, events, and the Code of Ethics. And also to the governing documents, which means you need to know the governing documents. Stay in your lane. You're not an attorney, so I would not recommend practicing law or giving legal advice. Recommend to the board when they need to hire an attorney. You're not an insurance broker. Recommend proper insurance coverage and recommend that they work with the experts. You are a fiduciary for your client's financial affairs. That means that you need to recommend that they file taxes, that they follow the law, and that they hire a CPA. Now, this is important because you're going to get pushback from your boards of directors. They don't really want to spend money on an attorney. I mean, you're there. It's only going to take 5 minutes of your time. Why don't you answer the question? Or, we don't need a construction manager. You're a manager. Why don't you manage the construction? But it's important that we not take on roles for which we're not qualified. And you can reference the CACM Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice and our required adherence to it as a reason why you can't take on those roles that you're not qualified for. The association's records are the association's property. Remember that manager who was writing herself 10% of each contract, writing herself checks? Well, the same manager that we discussed before refused to hand over the association's records to me. I ended up having to search through the association storage closets on site, and I finally found them packed haphazardly into moldering and moldy boxes. There was water intrusion in the closet. They were filthy, they were buggy. Most of them were illegible because of the deterioration due to water intrusion, and they were anything but organized. And that's how I received them. So I'd recommend that when you're turning over the association's records, either to another company, to another board of directors, that you turn them over in the condition in which you would like to receive them: clean, organized, and complete. And this goes for all association property. That landscaper that I was also talking about before, the one that was giving kickbacks, was a bit unhinged, and he didn't want to give up the keys. He did not want to give up the landscape plans. And I ended up having to meet with him in a public place, in a parking lot, and have security there with us in order to get those belongings of the association, which we were entitled to. Now, here's something to think about. What constitutes a gift and what constitutes a bribe? CACM's Code of Ethics say that you shouldn't accept gifts greater than $300 in value. Company policy is that we neither solicit nor accept any gifts. Trade show gifts and raffles and lunch and learns are okay. In my case, I was once offered by a vendor once offered to renovate my kitchen. And we didn't even get to what he was asking for in return. I think he wanted a job that I was having people bid on, but we didn't even get to that portion of the conversation. I ended the conversation and I opted not to ask them to bid on anything else ever again. Now, this was worth like $20,000 or more to me, and it was tempting, but it's not worth it to take any kind of a bribe. And if a vendor loses sense of their ethics and they can pull a manager away from their ethics, then the game's up. Now, other items included in the Code of Ethics are disclosing conflicts of interest. So if you have an ownership stake in a company that's bidding on the property, or if a relative works for them, you should disclose that. So should board members. They don't always do it, but they should. If one of their uncles has a landscape company and it's working for the association, the members should know about that. Also, it's your job to facilitate communication with the owners and with the board. And that includes maintaining the membership list and releasing it upon written request for matters reasonably related to the governance of the association. So again, it all boils down to this: loyalty, honesty, integrity, faithfulness, and keeping confidences. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next in the Best Practices series. Thank you.